So, happy March. We're caught in between time. I mean, this will go, I mean, it is live, but this will go into the seventh day of March. And on the seventh day, there was new beginnings. Um, and the seventh being the eve of other holidays, other ideologies, in the timing of things as well. I have celebrated Mahashivratri before. If you don't know, it is kind of a lovely reset. Um, and also probably why I love Lunar New Year's and what have you. Lunar New Year, plural, New Year's, plural. Um, but anyway, as promised, the vibes of the month and little pieces, little knickknacks of wisdom we can take with us for that time. Um, yeah, it just kind of like flew by. Time is moving fast. And I don't know, I'm not gonna hold myself to the first of anything. Uh, but we're rocking, we're rolling. Oh, that is still really hot. That is still very hot. There's a lot of interesting astrological events in March. For as much as people are like, typically in like a lion, out like a lamb, or what have you, it's interesting to me that we've kind of had both all at once, or everything all at once. The day will start one way and end another way, and one day is this, and the next day is something entirely different, and there's storms of brewing, and all of it is uh, spiraling and hectic and all of these things, and just fast paced and fast moving. The change of air fronts, the quick change of air fronts actually has some interesting repercussions as well, just in pressure and sound. So that is all happening outside as well as inside. And it is both the lion and the lamb all at once, all at the same time, and uh, is making quite a mission of us. Is making quite a not a mockery, making something of us. Um, there's a super moon, there's a micro moon. There's other planets and other forms of extremes, but rather than it be all about that and what things are where and what have you, um, it is everywhere all at once. And so we'll play with the energy and the cycles of that, um, because any God, all God, your God, my God, not that I have one, uh, exists within a circle. Um, so we'll play with those energies and go throughout everybody. I'll pull top and bottom, and we'll see if we need numbers to clarify, although we always do. It's time and space. But we'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling. It is Pisces season, so we'll start with Pisces, even though we uh, love you, Aquarius, and sent you off. You've already had your day, and the coming ones will have theirs, their time and their place. Um, what else? I don't know. Dreams have been really interesting, of course, entering Pisces season. I feel very much like, for as much as, time is rushing along, uh, it's also the heaviness of consolidated timelines, or like, the rushing of them running into each other, the pressures of that. But I also think maybe for as wild as our dreams can be, it is some version of self and of possibility, um, that is interest that sometimes feels more real than this life, um and that goes for the good ones and the bad ones, honestly. But I've definitely felt like a lot of those are coming to a head and calling for a lot of questions as well, but it's also just the question of possibility. uh you know what are we what does that add to this timeline realistically? Actually, a friend of mine told me that they had a dream that I uh chose to pass away. And as much as that felt strangely real and also very surreal, I think brought a lot of comfort that perhaps the tension that exists in between those timelines is something that I can find and continue to feel ease in, and sort of like a weight lifted, I suppose. Uh, that's not to say that that's a great thing or that's like the ideal, but how are these things relating? How do they interweave? Essentially, I'm rambling a little bit. Pisces, let's just focus on you instead of getting lost in the water. Dear Pisces, my dear, dear Pisces. Let's focus on you instead of getting lost in the water. Nine of Cups and the Lovers. Maybe I wasn't rambling. Maybe, um, because this is like in a very in the way that we interact with these cards on a superficial or like commonplace level. There's very much there's many faces, and then there's still more than two in the Lovers. Let's be real, but like the attention is much more focused, and it's much more felt, and uh, with this card, there's literally multiple characters. Um, it's much more about feeling than it is doing. Think quantity or quality over quantity, or and not over, but instead of, uh, and the ways in which that grows. It's very much like Lost in a Dream too. And for as much as I thought I was rambling, the many possibilities that exist in dreams and nightmares, the many possibilities that exist in psychedelic trips and trance states and meditative states. I have a hunch that not that they're all the same place, but maybe they are. That's maybe why scientists are starting to, I mean, not starting to, but have been mapping the DMT universe, or why they're so interested in why ayahuasca, or why, or mushrooms, and why often we hallucinate, or have visions of similar things, is because it is, in fact, the same place. Even with dreams, I've had so many overlaps of dreams that people I know have had, of people that I've never met, of people that have met me before in another lifetime. It's almost like a break room, like an office, like an employee sort of like staff hangout area versus like going out into the real world. So while the Lovers is very much focusing that energy, the Nine of Cups, rather than being torn by the focus of or the what if or the FOMO of all of these different paths, it is a bright side. Like, maybe don't get too attached to any of it, but entertain and explore the ideas. That's kind of the wonder of curiosity, is not, we don't cry when the sandcastle falls. We sort of are, or even more alive with the interaction that the earth plays with it, with the ability to try again, with, this sort of organic way of playing, really, and not being so attached to the results, which is, for as much as when I was rambling was like, oh, this whole, suicide dream. Um, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word. But this whole dream thing, uh, rather than it, and it at first very much was like kind of doom and gloom, and I was like, oh, it was very visceral how much uh, a version of me was still very hurting. And so I felt that very deeply, but rather than that bring misery into this world, or into this reality, I kind of thought to myself, what a blessing to have not chosen that. And also, if that version, sacrificed themselves for something bigger or what have you, whatever it is, it's a way that maybe the timeline's consolidated so that that version of me could offer whatever I needed, of that self constellation in this world. So I took it kind of as an offering to myself also, which is a brighter side of things, which is very much that non like a non-attachment that exists with this Nine of Cups that is still very elating. So while these cards are interacting, very much so, they are also the possibilities of this or that, and the ways in which we can dwell in between. Uh, it's for as much as Pisces, even in depiction, is, these two koi, or, these two somethings, somethings or other, uh, or fish in general, uh, it does also serve much, much beyond that, much beyond just water, much beyond just the fish, but also just farther beyond the two, in the same way that like the yin yang does. It's not just black and white, it is about their intermittent relationship and reaction. So in which ways are we also overwhelmed by too much, and in what ways are we still brought down by not enough? And when we find a balance in between those things and find sort of equilibrium and balance, we find, a sort of emotional homeostasis, which has been difficult, like I said, with the weather doing what it is, with news stories to shock and awe every day. Um, it's almost like that is like homeostasis is mythical, like balance is mythical, but it is in fact not. Pretty intense, but very mind ridden. So we'll pull numbers like we do. Like we do, like we do, like we do. Sorry, I say that to myself often. Oh, that's funny. These are 6 and 9 too. The Lovers is a 6 and the 9 of Cups. Which, again, very independent characters, but they do interact. Aleister Crowley would also call it a very queer number, in the ways that it interacts, which is possibility. I think queer thought is a lot of what ifs, but maybe that's something else to explore. Pisces, give me a number. Ooh, okay. An 8 and a 6. Okay. So the 6 is aligned. The 6 of Hearts at that aligns with this Lovers. The 8 of Clubs with this 9 of Cups. Interesting. As much as that word is similar, the elements are very different. However, it is very much cyclical. Cyclical natures or behaviors, which is maybe where, if you find yourself having bounced around and throughout these two ideas or things or feelings or whatever it is, paradigms, um, and you know how there's some people that are just like, just fuck it and go for it, or there's sometimes, sure, where that's appropriate. Um, I feel like the 8 pairing with this 9 is much more about, rather than just forcing it, taking a step back, so that you can feel the momentum, feel the environment, or reprioritize perhaps, um, see where the heat is or where it goes. Uh, in context of this Lovers, where the attention grows, or goes, and ultimately will create more of a tangible stability, even in, maybe even in thought and body, maybe less sweating and nerves, in that context. But it feels less like just, fuck it and jump. I guess thinking, if we were to think of this in context of people, if we had all of these options, and this 8 is like, take a step back and really consider what you want and what you value, rather than YOLO, I'm just going to pick this person because this is who I'm seeing the most right now, or because this is who I like kissing the most, or who sucks better dick. I don't know. I don't know if I can say that on here either. Jesus. I don't know if I can say that. I can, but it might piss somebody off. Let's see. Think of it in context of what you're offering rather than what they offer you. Or whatever it is offers you, rather than, well, this gives me blah blah blah. Well, going to do this or blah 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 gives me this, or seeing this person more buys me dinner, takes me places, whatever, whatever. All of that's fucking tangible nonsense that does not actually equate to stability. It will disappear just as quickly. Bet you that. And that is not stability or a stable, reflective feeling of love that either of these sixes regard in, or shelter, or sort of hone in on. So consider it that way. And review the handful of things that I had just told you. But priority, focus, and feeling rather than gifting, I suppose. All right. Thanks, Pisces. You got a lot going on. I can only pull so many cards. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Aries is also a beckoning new. That is show pony of a lifetime. Angry bull, waiting to be the fucking star of the show when all you know you are is the fucking star of the show, which makes or breaks sometimes. My dear Aries, how are you brewing with this storm? How will you do? Okay. Aries. How are you doing? Interesting. Ooh, okay. This is difficult, actually. This is also another 6-9 situation. Interesting. The Six of Wands and the Nine of Swords. Top of the deck, bottom of the deck. The Six of Wands has pulled yeses in the past for me, has pulled positive predictions in the past for me. Wow, that is really good. I also don't need this whole bag, do I? It's pulled positive predictions, it's pulled yeses, it's pulled perfection, or not that perfection exists, but like when things work out, when you build a strong structure, when you have pride in that moment, not that there is perfection, but when you have pride in something that you've done, that can feel really fucking good, and that's as close as we'll get to perfection because it doesn't fucking exist. But so bottom of the deck of that is the Nine of Swords. I love swords. Swords are very powerful. Swords are very striking and upright. The Nine of Swords is a particularly difficult card. The Nine of Swords is a card when you just don't know if you can make it. I've been there. Um, I I have fucked with this Nine of Swords. It's very much wrought in a graveyard of souls. Interpersonally, in your own right, that can be a lot of thought. That can be a lot of dark thought. 100%. It's like when your depression is just like, but nobody will love you. But blah 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 blah. And those are very much these sticky, icky, like crazy thoughts that we have. Not crazy, inaccurate. Um, it is the fear. It is what fear looks like. When we give it so much presence that it takes form. There is something very oily and slick about it that sticks and can be hard to shake. Um, then you can see in this character also sort of martyred or what looks like crucified, but is also sort of like in the stockades of it and bound in that way. Mental bondage, spiritual bondage. Um, these two things are also very much separates entirely and also very much interwoven and interacting in the same, because this is the winner and this is the loser. And this is also how we break ourselves down in our own right. This is division of power. This is like separate paradigms and separate lifetimes, or separate paradigms and separate lifelines. Um, Separate lifelines. But it is like in a wide scale, but it is also the small scale. This is just the winner. This is just a loser. Um, the Nine of Swords is both sad at the loss of the Six of Wands, but is also and is beaten by the Six of Wands, but is also unable to see that it is intermittent and sort of interwoven with it. So like interpersonally, this is like our bad moods and our good moods. But we can also kind of see it in this like somebody else is on top of me and holding me down kind of way. Both can be true at the same time. It isn't always one or the other. Sometimes you really can feel um, disempowered and isolated and bullied by your government, or by a person, or by yourself. We also can be maybe some of the worst bullies in our lives, um, because of the ways that we can offer kindness and a clear sight to others, but often with ourselves, that's the harder thing to do or the harder thing to see. So, in those ways, both are true. We can see this outright when it is a victor and a loser, or somebody empowering and disempowering, somebody creating this leverage or this hierarchy. But when it is versions of ourselves, we can't necessarily see that. Just like you can't see the back of your head. It's a difficult part. Um, and so it becomes less believable, and therefore I think maybe all that more dangerous as well. Um, it's easier to navigate protecting yourself from that which you can see and that which you can see clearly and call clearly and name. Um, it is much, much, much more difficult to fight something, no, to counter something to grow beyond something, to heal something that you cannot see and that you do not know what name to call it. I actually have a huge theory that that's the only reason why there's names to devils or angels, is because this energy that is part of everything finds familiar densities in other situations like it, like molecules attract like molecules. Um, where angels break bridges or flood the earth or whatever the fuck, are often much more destructive, and therefore it is the breaking of particles, whereas demons will physically manifest. This attributed to addictions, but all solid things, solid presence, where molecules combined. But beyond that, in an abstract sense, the things that we are afraid of, like being abandoned or unloved or what have you, have much more like girth and depth to them as feelings, but aren't necessarily something you can easily call. Um, so when you look at it that way, you have something to look for when you dig, and you can identify what it is with what it feels like, be able to name it, be able to uncover it, and make that fear all the less fearful. The best thing I've ever learned about fear, is that you cannot run. It will chase you. And if you breathe, it dissipates. Paradise is maybe in a breath. And the fear is all around us. Gosh, I don't know. I've learned many things about fear, seen many a thing, and it comes with this card. Um, there was some moment while I was talking there too, where I thought the victory and the victor, from their perspective, also thinks, even if it is separate, also probably thinks that they're doing the best or their best. And I always say this too, beyond good or bad people, we are all just doing the best we can with the information that we have. And because of that, maybe this person has information that did knowingly or unknowingly fuck this person over. Um, I think that is very much a depiction of industrialization. Um, there is a victor, and there's the CEOs and the working class. There's a victor, and there's a not. There is the exploited, a victor and the exploited. That's the best way to put it, actually. Thank you. Um, and seeing that this is March, I mean, not March, seeing that this is Aries and March, um, I think there's a lot to be said about the trajectory of industry as it goes, um, as it is. Whether that be just things you're noticing on a day-to-day basis, that things are more card oriented, or I've read an article that there's servers and robot servers, like humanoid robots serving dishes, um, and AI. Obviously, there's multiple new variations, expansions on this open AI model, and neuromorphic computing, and this Gemini bot and its uh, successors, um, let alone competition and their successors. So I do find a lot of overwhelm here, but there is also opportunity. If we can see the bad, we can see the good. If we look beyond the fear, if you breathe beyond that moment. I mean, that also depends. Which side are you on? I mean, both sides of everything. It's it's everything everywhere all at once, isn't it? Is that fucking theme of the month or what? Gosh, that's a lot. I know it's probably too much to pull numbers, but we're gonna be consistent. Da, 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 da. I think this Nine of Swords is also much more about trapping, not much more, but an element here. Trapping your energy more so than your body. Granted, those two things, again, also interact. When our energy is trapped, oftentimes our body does not feel as mobile, or can feel immobile in some ways, shapes, or areas, or ways or areas. Shapes works too. So again, it's much more about feeling where this is coming from, or where any of those feelings are coming from. And maybe that's also how we lend some grace to the Six of Wands victor if we also find ourselves more on the other side. Let's not lose our humble, even though we are very empowered. Let's not lose touch with the ways that we are feeling, just because we are now working with different structures. And that can be a lot of ego boost and death too. So maybe that's also an element of this. If you know the industrialization part wasn't ringing true for you. All right. What you got? What you got, love? I was really expecting more sixes. Okay, the Six of Wands has this Two of Diamonds. So I think a way to stay humble too in this victory is also the way we measure that success. Yes, we're going to, let's just play a game and say like, yes, this company worked, even though it worked on the back of these people. It's not all just numbers and trajectory and profit and da 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 da. The Two of Diamonds is also um, a, what does that offer to you? What does that offer to the world? Not necessarily in like big things, but like, can you sleep at night? Like, do you sleep with yourself well at night? Do you have trouble sleeping at all? Um, and this person is also very much in tune with what they feel, because if anything, I feel like this is very much a ritual of cleansing in a way too. Um, and one of my best friends told me once that you should judge your safety. You should judge your success based on the amount of people that feel safe around you, or based on how safe people feel around you. Maybe not the amount. That's a poor quote. I'm just talking here. But judge your success based on how safe people feel around you. I'm pretty sure that was more accurate. Um, and that is one person feeling the safest they've ever felt around you. And that can be everything. That can be what really, really helps you sleep that night. I think this Six of Wands, though victorious, can also remain grounded and humble. And though there's this, tower of wands beneath them, it ought not serve as a fortress. It ought not serve as just a shield. Even if that's our ego and our confidence, it ought not separate us from emotion, from feeling, from curiosity and risk, quote unquote. Because curiosity and risk are kind of frisking in this scenario. Jack of Hearts is very much this curious risk, actually. Is very much this fun friction, because of it, actually. It's very much doing what you love. And that feels more victorious than anything. It's very much doing what brings like excitement and new and nice and nice and nice. It's all of the spontaneity, but with developed security. With developed security, because the Six of Wands acknowledges that they're safe, but and acknowledges that they've created this safety, and so they can step outside of it because they can always retreat. They can always go back to do their thing and recover and uh and rest and recoup. Sort of like, you have your saving point in a video game and you go out and you do your thing. And, if you die, you respawn here or whatever, but you have to go back here to save your progress and to maybe like heal your character or something. That's very much what the Six of Wands ought to be about. And because they're already so intermingled, if that is what the Six of Wands is about, then this Nine of Wands won't feel so left behind. And that's both, again, inside of ourselves. Um, the version of us that feels left behind because we sold our souls and went corporate. Not sold, but the version of us that feels, you know, judged because, we found the perfect relationship, but now we're just so obsessed with not displeasing, um, that we've shielded ourselves. And sure, yeah, company building things off people's back, but if you establish a industrious model that doesn't create this hierarchy of exploitation, then these people are these people, and there is no exploitation or expenditure in that way. Yeah, I don't know. The same way when you think of other people, your life is kind of more fulfilling. Or when you serve and when you act in service and all of these things that are less narcissistic, um, or like self-oriented. Not to call you a narcissist per se, but we're living in a very narcissistic time. And you know what? It doesn't hurt to explore that. I have tested myself many a time for that. All right, done with you, Aries. Let's move on to our dear Taurus, our soft little baby girl, mountain goat. No, that's Capricorn. Taurus is still horrible. I just know some really sweet Tauruses. Taurians? Taurusi. Woo! Okay, lovely. Okay, dear Taurus. Oh, hello. Oh, hello. Okay. High energy. Give me a second. We're going to pull all of this together right now. There's something really exciting here and also really relaxing. I love that we're having all of these like paradoxes, like dichotomies. But paradoxes, it's not counterintuitive, it's not canceling each other out. They very much feed each other in these contexts, which maybe going back to the first one is believing in the possibility of taking yourself out of that system. For a lot of us that are starting these, habits or patterns or beating ourselves up, like I said, for, patterns that we started in New Year's and whatever, that can be pretty simply boiled down to breaking a habit, breaking a pattern in the constellation. It's something I said about the constellation of self earlier, and understanding how to place your particles. Really, that's actually one of my favorite things to do in meditation. Is to place your particles. Temperance is also very much about that. It's not necessarily about the gold or the silver or the water in and of itself, but it is about the space in between. It is about what happens, very literally, what happens to water when you shake it up, and the hydrogen bonds and the information that is stored in there, and the more viscous of quality. Everything in the information that is stored there is information that is possible and available to us. And so one of my favorite things to do in meditation is kind of like visualize everything breaking apart, and like if everything was just dots, if everything was just what it would look like if it was atoms, if it was particles. And as overwhelming as that can be, cool, they're bouncing around, da 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 da. But now I have to still them. Now I get to reassemble reality on however I want, and I can place these particles back around everything. Sometimes it's just looking at a mainframe structure or something, putting the doorway back together. But in the same way that you're putting yourself back together, maybe all of that doubt and paranoia and apologizing for yourself being seen is something that doesn't make it back into that uh, re paradigming. You have to do something with it though. You can't just leave it there in the ether. If it's bouncing around everywhere, then that's no good for everybody. But it is something that you can see, you can identify, you can name, and therefore you can place it again. You can identify where you felt it, and why, and maybe you can put it in your heart where you can honor it rather than it being in the palm of your hand where you're offering it to everybody else instead, or where you're holding back from everything that you could do instead, which 100% I've done, rather than, my fear of, you know, loving versus like giving love versus receiving love. I'll visualize particles breaking apart, like my hand sort of disintegrating. Um, and when I put it back together, rather than that be one of the particles, it goes in my heart instead, or vice versa. Again, however it is you're dealing, my friend. But when you do that, when you honor that, you become the safe place for yourself. You become the star of your show. And that is very much an incredible luminosity as a natural state. As a natural state. It's not something that you have to try for. I think it's just something you will find yourself learning gracefully throughout this month. Um, as long as you're patient with yourself, it'll take longer if you're not patient with yourself. And it'll be more difficult if you're not patient with yourself, if you're not honoring of your star nature with temperance. These are very much, again, two sides of the self in this context. I think there's something to be said about the way we spend, whatever that is, whether that's money, whether that's time, whether that's um, general indulgence. Uh, the star is more so overindulgent in this context, and temperance is very much like I only need what I have. I'm only taking what I need. And anything that which I don't need will be, given to others that need more than I do. Whereas the star is just like, oh no, beautiful, take it all. Um, so there is something to be said about that, and whatever that means for you. Um, the star is a renewable resource. Um, our energy is an incredible renewable resource when we honor ourselves, but being mindless with that energy, not wasteful, being mindless with that energy is maybe a better way to define what dishonoring that energy could look like or feel like. Um, Mindful versus mindless, rather than too much or not enough, or any of these other circumstantial, tangible, measurable things. Um, the same is also true of these numbers: Five of Hearts, Six of Clubs. Um, the Five of Hearts is very much a preparatory state. Um, there's never too much on the grill. Um, there's never too many ideas, and that's a good thing. That's absolutely a good thing. This sort of like consistent simmering of your creative energy, very much a flow. Um, However, allow that for allow that to create more time for safety and rest too. So that I guess it's the difference between uh like fasting and not even indulging, just like normal hunger, normal preparing and cooking and what have you, and like fasting. And it's not neither are painful. One is like, I think, more like making my friends burgers. And one is more like, I can't wait to tell my friends this story I read. Or like, I love listening to the birds chirp is actually probably a better one. Um, but sometimes you like reading next to friends because they're just really cool. Uh, but it's not that they need anything, it's that they're just enjoying the moment. And if they need it, they'll get it later. But for the moment, things are bright and peaceful and good and satiated generally. And that's what fasting is about, in my experience. Um, is Rather than like a strict, I can't. It's very much about seeing the opportunity to uh, allow your body to fully digest everything that you've gone through, and everything you've learned and everything you've grown, and showing uh, honor for that fulfillment, and taking time to be more grateful rather than mindlessly indulgent. So it is a really powerful exercise, uh, however it is that you want to do it. I believe Ramadan already started. Yeah, this Six of Wands character is really interesting. They can move at any time, they choose not to. I think they're very comfortable and content in their will to live, their will to thrive, their will to do, their will to understand. And that is choice. And I think this Five of Hearts is a very like maybe like la di da, I love everything. I couldn't even say la di da, but it's very much also, I think, able to look on the bright sides of, the reasons why, rather than I have so many burgers to eat or da 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 da, I can't wait for this food. It's more about the why behind this. It's more about, wow, I'm grateful I have so many people to share this with. Wow, I'm grateful that so many people took the time out of their day to come spend this time with me. Wow, I'm grateful that, it's the perfect day for me to be outside. All of these other, again, intangible, kind of more atmospheric, immeasurable kind of things. Um, and that is maybe a helpful thing, a helpful reminder, and what to focus on when you're reassessing your progress or your profits for anything. Um, Party on. Love you, Taurus. Keep on keeping on. Dear Gemini, how are you and I, and I, and I? Dear Gemini. The shadow is kind of ominous, huh? Let me do it. Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Again, dichotomous concept. The King of Wands inverted and the Knight of Swords. The King of Wands inverted and the Knight of Swords. I feel like this is also kind of imploding energy. They are directly facing each other. If this isn't an opposition they are already dealing with other people, which maybe this is just premonitory of the frustration that we have within ourselves is frustration that we will be presented with more so at this time. I feel like the Knight of Wands can internally and with ourselves can maybe be very much an overpowering, overshadowing structure on this Knight of Wands. The, fearful, neglectful, toxic parent to ourselves in us that we have mentally. The Knight of Swords, color palette wise and what have you, is very reminiscent of that Nine of Swords that we saw earlier. However, that's not all there is to this Nine of Swords. The Nine of Swords, if this is not, or when this is not, or if we can satiate or heal the idea of this Knight of Wands being a fear presiding over the King of Wands energy, a fear presiding over action, consequence, for instance. This is consequence, this is action, this is inaction. I actually can't tell which way I'm supposed to be putting that. However, beyond the fear, and the best antidote to fear is knowledge. And the Knight of Swords is a powerful knower of things, maybe to their own detriment. The Knight of Swords is a powerful knower of things. It's a very upright energy. It's a very honorable energy. It's a very wise and seeking energy in seeking wisdom, seeking other wisdom, and also protecting wisdom, that which is known as well. Whereas the King of Wands is also very like willy-nilly. Fire can touch a lot of things and get out of hand really quick, and can burn very easily. whereas the sword will only cut if it is unsheathed, which takes some time to get there. So you really gotta fuck up, don't you? Da, 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 da. This is very much internally, perhaps a blockade with you, fearing your own or fearing consequences, or fearing results of progress, or fearing what you deem to be failure if the King of Wands ever were to try, or ever were to make or create. Where the Knight of Wands is hard-headed, though. Where the Knight of Swords is hard-headed, the King of Wands serves kind of like a joker or like a jester in this, I would think, and is also very much capable about turning expectation upside down on the head of the King of Swords, the Knight of Swords, whatever. I think the way to either fiddle with the reality of a hard-headed Knight of Swords, if this is somebody that is messing with you, or the way to unify the light and dark, if this Knight of Swords is a version of you, is the fear inside of you, is to unify with what your intention is and the way that you feel about it, rather than the way that you're thinking about it. Because I don't know if I can. The stars that align on this is not on the head. Is not on the wisdom necessarily of this Knight of Swords. It's very much in their emotional perception, and it's very much in the like third eye perception of this horse that they're like very attached to, right? Like this horse has been through shit with this Knight of Swords. When you appeal to that which they, care, what they honor most, what they care about, what you honor most, what you care about most, outside of yourself. This is, God, the best example that I have of this is, I think what ultimately, in a big way, took for me to understand that I couldn't keep hurting myself, or going back to this dream of me on another timeline, being in that, very much in that energy, was understanding the effect that I had on others. 100%. It took me out of myself. It was less about me. It was less about how I felt, and it was more, I can't do this too. It becomes more about, serving with love than it does about, my own narcissistic little world. Not that I even mean that in like the clinical diagnostic way or a negative way. Um, a negative way more so. Because clinically and diagnostically, it's not necessarily a negative personality trait. Again, go back to my other video. I don't believe in good or bad people, not anymore. And Gemini, you should know this. Uh, let's see. But okay, we figured out how to align this, how to structure this. Ultimately, the King of Wands can also serve as a guiding light, as a guiding point to the Knight of Swords beyond hard-headedness. If you can appeal to the emotional world of a hard-headed and wounded you or other whatever, but the Knight of Swords is just like not wounded, but like wounded. They, like, I'm pretty sure is the only knight in this deck with scars on their face. But the King of Wands can inspire. It's kind of the same way, you know how like you see like real angry looking motherfucking dudes, and then there's like this really cute kid that's like, look, a butterfly, and all of a sudden this dude, this person, this strange, angry looking person smiles, and you never thought that they could be so soft. Uh, there was an interview, actually, I was watching. This dude had his face burned off and was talking about, and was in war, and was talking about how he is a monster. And how children were often afraid of him. But there was one time when a little girl came up and said, didn't say anything. I think she like ran away or something, but he could hear her say like, he's really nice. And those little things, like that's the softness that this Knight of Swords softens to. That's the softness that a man that thought he was a monster is inspired by. Not monstrosity, those two things don't go together. I used to joke that I myself was a monster. I guess not joke. I said it very seriously, actually. Man-made monster. Hard candy shell, soft inside. That is very much these as well. And you can lead this Knight of Swords in you out of its own frustration or fear or doubt, or towering over for sake of fear or doubt, to be more inspired by a loosier, goosier King of Wands kind of nature, so that you can both take shelter in that palace of ideas, my friend, along with a full heart and lots of opportunity. Um, 10 of Hearts, 7 of Clubs. 7 of Clubs inverted. 10 of Hearts inverted. I think it's like a new paradigm of fulfillment. Of need of like what's beyond like life after longing, I suppose. Um, the 10 of Hearts is very much a completion, but it's inverted, and the King of Wands, it, it's just it's not serving on a journey for the sake of completion. It's very much like a road trip for the sake of a road trip. You know what I mean? Um, and the 7 of Wands also inverted. So many opportunities still exist. However, I think it's much more, there's much more focus on what's necessary or what's like for you, I suppose. It's like, it can be really overwhelming to go to the mall because there's so many options and you only need one thing. Or you just know that this one thing is all that this is your favorite pair of jeans. You don't need to look anywhere else. So all of these other stores ain't no kind of distraction because you only got eyes for one, or whatever. Um, I feel like there's much more ease, more peace of mind to that. Um, that is maybe a softness in this Knight of Swords that you're enough, that you know enough, you have enough, you have done and continue to do enough to create the kind of space, the kind of like safe lighthouse that you would want. Because this is very much what I'm getting lost in. It's very much like a off in the distance, like ultimate, like Gatsby, like kind of like party. Um, Not that it is like a Gatsby party, but you know what I mean, like the off in the distance fucking club. Um, da, 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 da. Yeah, you are enough to be able to establish that in your own right and feel bountiful and whole, and that will only start to um, align more of these stars in your eyes and in your heart for that which fits best. Party. Da, 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 da. Cancer. My crusty crustacean. Crusty station. How are you feeling? What is in love? I'm into that. Okay. Nine of Swords and the Lovers, and both inverted. But let's see. Nine of Swords at the top of the deck. I mean, maybe possibility is just overwhelming to think about. Maybe there's a lot of thoughts and what ifs that is like kind of blinding into moving so fast. But that is not what we have to take with us. I think there's, especially with them being inverted, is that this is also probably a very heavy burden. This is also probably something that you feel is so deeply ingrained in you that there's no way that it couldn't be a part of any reality. You know, like, haha, fucking these idiots that think they can quantum leap into another reality. Good luck getting rid of this trauma, kind of thing. It's not all fun and games, even if we make fun of it. But I promise you, this is paradise, and it's not in the Lovers. It's in not being blinded by possibilities and being satiated by the void. Because, you know, love or not, or marriage or not, or whatever, nobody's going to the void with you. You know, nobody's taking the same trip as you if you fucking decide to do a trip with somebody. That's still very separate. We go to separate places. So at the end of the day, the Lovers is about our internal universe and our internal modes of reflection of love as well, the ways in which we love and unify our energies. The inner, our inner Lilith and Samael, our inner Shiva and Shakti, our inner uh, God and Shekinah, whatever. Um, the Nine of Swords is very overwhelmed by visual stimuli. In this context, where I think the Lovers will find refuge in the internal workings of it all. Quite honestly, it's very much the again, sort of paradox and dichotomy of the void. Um, the void is pitch black, and that is terrifying. But at the same time, it's also a vastness for any and everything. So it's also kind of magnificent in that way. What's so scary when you can have anything and everything, and nothing is pushing back on you? Like, the way I think of it is like, if you were like designing like 3D uh visuals, or I don't know what it's called. If you were like to design a game, your screen gives you a black screen, but you create plot points that give that screen depth. Um, that is very much the void. And you know what? The depth of that can collapse with the fear, absolutely, and it compresses and it becomes 2D. But when you relax into it, it expands, and you've got a whole world to surf around in. This is very much also, I think, like, looks exactly like, when Eleven in Stranger Things, goes into the void to find people and places and things. Everything exists there, which is amazing and fantastic, and all of these wonderful things. Um, but something about that blank slate, that blank canvas, is terrifying, because we don't know yet that it is our paradise or our hell, whichever we so choose, with our creativity and our will and our energy and our focus. And the Lovers is very much about your focus and the way that that feels. And the way that that weaves stories, and the way that that connects intimately with the world around you, not just with one person, not just with lovers, not just with friends, not just with family, but with everything. Um, which is a really different way to look at the world, or to look at any one thing. Um, and it's not that anything itself needs to change, it's that our perspective of it changes. It's that our memory about it changes. Um, or maybe the memory doesn't change, but the current attitude changes, and so that creates a new trajectory. But along this cycle of our memories and our actions, and our our memories and our wills and our actions, um, those things can change at the drop of a hat if we so choose. If you have the same memory of this negative thing that you have the will to not bring with you to the new year, or a new timeline, or a new version of self, or what have you, then so mote it be. But you have to understand the power of changing that momentum, and believe in it and lean into it, and trust your fucking self, bro. And don't feel like you can't fucking trust yourself because you feel like you don't have anybody else to trust. Um, at the end of the day, I think love is about the ways in which we can share, across the board. Even if it was, marriage, you share your growth throughout that time. And when you stop sharing your growth, or you feel like you're no longer able to grow, then those things don't necessarily work. And so, as lonely as you may feel sometimes, again, without changing a thing, but perhaps changing your perspective, um, maybe it's not that you're alone at all, but that you are intimately involved and familiar on a soul level and on an energy level with everyone. I mean, and maybe on a not everyone, but um, but that turns the lone wolf into the hermit, um, into the high priestess, into a figure that suddenly we're like, oh yeah, well, that's something worth living. And nothing changed. It's just our perspective of it, our empowerment of it, and the ways in which we navigate the fear of it. I have to pull numbers. even though that was a lot, and how the number is going to talk about a void. Let's see. Does time exist in a spaceless void? There's a lot of energy here, and a lot of like sort of scattered and haphazard. But it does not have to be. We got the Joker and the Three of Diamonds. The Joker is transformation card, which is again decide right now that you do not want to be this Nine of Swords in paradise. You do not want to bring this pain to paradise, and you are paradise. So it's not that you're leaving a piece of you behind, but it is that you have to transform your perspective about that piece of you, about that interaction, whatever the fuck it is. The Joker is a transformation card. The Joker and the Three of Diamonds is also about where your focus is going and how that's going to grow. And when we feel really scatterbrained and disorganized and unfocused, we are not stable anywhere, let alone in the ways that we feel. Very literally, feeling unfocused and like real scatterbrained feels like all of your particles are shaking. So again, maybe we meditate on stopping that shake and deciding where those particles go, just like we would decide what we want to watch, what we want to listen to, who we want to be. Maybe it's that easy. There's a lot of options, and it could be anything, but you know the ways that you've seen yourself blossom, and you know the things that you're afraid of, or you know the things that you're afraid of, and what is on the other side of that door. Only you know, really. And so get curious, be entertained by it, and allow yourself to be so entertained and so curious that even the impossible seems possible. And the impossible is whatever this Nine of Wands is weighted in, or this Nine of Swords is weighted in, does not have to come on the arc or wherever. The arc is a really good example, actually. Does not have to come on the arc, does not have to come with you forward into a new life, into a new world, into a new paradigm, regardless of any preconceived notions. 100%. Or fears of explaining it away. How many attachments are involved? That's all of that is attachments that don't actually serve us. These are attachments that do. So what are we attached to that is not serving us? All right, I'm going to stop going on this because I could probably go on forever and ever. Sorry, Cancer. We'll just have to figure it out as it goes. JK. No, obviously. It's a very vast one. You can get specific if you so choose. That's why I'm here. All right, dear Leo. How do you roar? Dear Leo, how do you roar? With great fire. Interesting. Okay. Um, the lovers again. And the Knight of Wands. The Knight of Wands at the top, the lovers at the bottom. The Knight of Wands. How do you roar, Leo? Loud and fucking in your face? Okay. I feel like this is a preconceived notion of whatever it is this Knight of Wands is running to. Whether it's a preconceived notion of love in specific, because we also have the lovers here, or what brings love, or what love is in general. It is not an accurate notion. The ways in which we have prepared for paradise are not accurate. Oh gosh, and I dropped a bunch, but we're just gonna have to redo that. I was distracted by how much is going on. And that's not like end all be all or like premonition of the times. The ways in which we prepare ourselves as you know an altar to life. The ways in which we prepare our energy for the world, prepare our minds to go about our days. The way that we prepare our hearts for our lovers. You know, the ways in which we prepare to share ourselves with somebody, or with something, or however it is you share yourself, my friend. And I feel like this Knight of Wands is very much like, here, take it. Almost like, I mean, and there's a lot of reasons it could be like, take it, I don't want it, or hot potato, like jokes on you. You know, where people think they're being cute, but they're actually being like really unhinged and unhealed and terrible. um I feel that way about self-described brats. But also to hand off, maybe seeking validation, like tell me it's good, you know, tell me you like it, tell me you love me, and that kind of neediness. Um, Tell me it's real. That's also a thing. But also beckons like almost like a treat too. And I think we're all maybe reevaluating how it is we've related in the past, because we're seeing a very different paradigm with Pluto and Aquarius versus Pluto and Capricorn. And as it oscillates between the two, I think it becomes more clearly clearly noticed. I think that's what I was going to say. And I feel like the Knight of Wands is also offering a treat, maybe, like an intensely so. Like you know, when your dog gets a treat and they can't freaking calm down, or smells the treat bag and they lose their mind. But in the context of love and lovers, that is a very transactional way, and that can often create a sort of leverage situation, which creates a scarcity mindset. All of that to say, all of these things and all of the reactions do not belong in paradise. They are not the highest version of you that is ready and willing to share that earnestly and with grace. There's something about past patterns, perhaps, whether that be, you know, aggression issues or trust issues or anger issues or whatever. There's something about past issues that linger in the past, linger in the shadow. But I think you haven't recognize that they don't have to repeat or reoccur, and that it does not have to be a personality trait. Does that make sense? Um, but it does not have to be a personality trait. It does not have to be the thing that shines most about you, or the thing that you offer first, in, love or friendship or anything. This is very much trauma bonding. Got it. Okay. Careful who you trauma bond with, Cancer, because it does not make for necessarily stable ground. It does also, I think, I think is opportunistic ground for an insertion of hierarchy, or insertion of leverage in some way, that is ultimately not about healing. And if we're trauma bonding, isn't the intention? When that happens, usually the goal is like, somebody gets me and it makes me feel better. So I would think that the goal is healing, but in outright, it's not how it's used, unfortunately. But can't tell you what to do. Just be careful. And understand that sometimes that plays a part in the repetition of cycles as well. Two unhealed uh, two unhealed knights rage throwing these wands at each other, and neither realize that none of that energy can enter in the lover's paradise. It is very much a new page turned. So analyze those things, There was another reading that talked about breaking habits, and psychological habits, and the reasons in which that we bond with people looking for external validation, is very much a thing. And one day you will not need that external validation, and you'll look back and you'll be like, I trauma bonded with this. Okay, what else we got for you, Cancer? Got it. Got it. Okay. To piggyback on the trauma bond thing, there's the King of Wands, King of Diamonds, and the Jack of Clubs. And the Jack of Clubs is a playful motherfucker. And he's very much about the joy of the moment in the game and what have you. But also, I think very much needs external validation if you're juggling all of these wands, Okay. Fuck, I had two thoughts. If you're juggling all of these wands, play on, playa, most people that are that superfluous with their interactions, it's not because they think themselves valuable. That's why it's so expendable. Um, and they need to be told of their value. And so they get little doses of it from multiple instances. That's the Jack of Wands inverted and juggling, very much so. But the Jack of Wands at the end is upright and proper. Is very much about the joy of the game rather than how good he looks playing the game. And that sort of takes us out this sort of egocentric, but what will they think about me sense of self that pushes us into relationships, but they think we'd be great together. And so you end up dating like probably the worst person you ever did. um, Rather than finding something that's truly fulfilling beyond the moment that can be in sort be enjoyed in such a way that it is timeless. Um, It's not just about quick moments and in the high. Um, it's hard to explain. There's very much just like, oh, wow, like, I'm so glad we just met because we're doing cocaine in the bathroom together versus running into somebody who you can't wait to run into again and being like, "Ah, I always feel like we're talking about, or like we're catching up after, lifetimes of not seeing each other. And that is a much more hearty meal for the heart. Is a much more satiated self than one constantly looking for external validation, um, or looking to bond in chaos with chaos and build nothing new. Chasing a storm. All rough things, but let me not be too hard on you because you're a Cancer and everything's hard on you. Well, like a crab would be, right? Was that Cancer? I thought that was Leo. Oops. That was Leo. That was the Leo writing. Sorry I mixed him up, but maybe there's something to be said. Maybe you're on. Maybe there's something to be said about that. Where do you have Cancer placements? In what ways are you feeling more watery? And maybe that can satiate why you're so erratic with your fire, or can feel so erratic with your fire. Irresponsible. Um, interesting little brain fart, but I think that's very much a valuable thing to explore. Uh, find where the converse is in your chart. Rather than proper Leo, what's its opposite? Rather than the most fiery fire sign, what's your most watery water sign? And that is where it hurts. Willing to bet. And that is where you will sell yourself short just to hear people tell you you're doing good. Or wherever your Chiron is, that's where it fucking hurts too. Especially if you got a water sign name. So, sorry for misnaming you. But I digress. We move on to our dear Virgos. To our dear Virgos. Dear Virgo, what do you mean? Very cool, very cool. King of Pentacles and the Hanged Man. Which is interesting. There's an offer, there's a sacrifice. I think the King of Pentacles is very much a generous offer. A generous offer, physical paradigm. This is often like when we get to see, spring come back, but with like that much more bloom. It's very much like getting to see the gains of your growth, getting to see the fruits that you've sown, and getting to see it physically, and not just because you can see it, but because others can see it, because it's like a look at this light, don't you see it too, kind of thing. that is ultimately really encompassing and very connecting. And we connect through service and offering in a large magnitude of ways. So I hope that it feels prosperous and it feels really exciting and comforting and growing and wonderful. Um, and I hope that the connections made also just open new doors, because that's also a huge potential here. Is there's a, or like a huge aspect here is a large potentiality in the pits of his sleeves, not pits, but in the vastness of his sleeves. The Hanged Man, typical sacrifice, but it's also kind of the sacrifice of contemplation as well. The sacrifice of stillness, the sacrifice of having had to have felt all of these things, and also to make peace with it. Um, so I don't know. It's interesting because you would think that they would be. I mean, not you would think that when they do something specific, but it like would obviously make sense if they were opposite. And it's like, oh, we've sacrificed so much through the winter that now we have the spring and blooming King of Pentacles. But it's like they have the bloom is there. The bloom exists. It is already something we're seeing grow. The Hanged Man is also like is almost like tempering off all of that growth, which is like, when you want a plant to grow bigger or like have bigger buds or bigger berries or whatever, you kind of like have to pick a few off so that more energy can go to the big ones. That's very much what I think is going on here. The hangman is very much contemplating that and picking off some aspects so that he can continue to grow and continue to harness this kind of growth, because this kind of growth can get out of hand and unmanageable very quickly if it is not understood. And this is how we stay lightweight and longevitous. Um, and stay, that's like the best way to put it. It's the seven of spades and the two of diamonds. Um, and how we say lightweight and longevitous. Both clean and grounded and centered. Not clean, pure. Whatever. Of energy. I don't mean any weird things about it. But how we sort of stay sure at the crossroads, uh, and the time that we take for ourselves in that, which is the hangman also having the discipline to understand growth. And that discipline is what I think trains this King of Pentacles to really be able to create what he has. I mean, even in his hand has like a little advisor, right? And the Seven of Swords and these Two of Wands. It's either stillness or slow movement. Da, 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 da. The blessed movement, grounded movement, big faiths, big hopes, very head in the sky, but feet firmly planted on the ground. Ironic, seeing as we have the hangman. So don't let the changing of patterns disorient you. And I know that could be maybe something specific for Virgo. I mean, something specific for Virgo. Very patterned, very detailed oriented in that way. Things will change and things will shift rapidly. Things will flip upside down. But do not let that change the sense of balance that you have in your head and in your heart. Do not let that throw off your sureness of the situation at any crossroads. Do not let that distract you from the ways in which that you want to feel in your life. Hold on to that will, because that will constantly grow. And that is also very much what is atop this king's head. Just saying. And then rewind to whatever I just said about patterns and Virgos, because that line was gold, but I can't think of it again right now as perfectly. But we'll let you rock that. Love ya. Libra. Yeah. All right, Libra, what say you? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Interesting. Eight of Wands and the Devil. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of satiation. There's a lot of throwing back of this energy at ourselves. How do we punish ourselves to spite other people? That is very much part of this. Because the Eight of Wands is such a creative, powerful card, but we cut our own hands off to spite other people all the time. Like it's kind of a part of teenage or like growth of development and adolescence, where you've got so many things and you feel so many things, and it feels like nobody understands, and anybody that does try to tell you what to do, you kind of lash out or do the opposite. Or anybody but that does hurt you, you just kind of like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna do 10 times worse. This is very much something that I think maybe the easiest example is sad or angry drinking. Well, we just broke up or whatever, fuck that. I'm gonna do da 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 instead. And I have seen many a person drink themselves like they were trying to off themselves, to spite another person, which makes no sense and is also like really toxic and manipulative. But that is another conversation. But so with this Devil, what attachments are made here that ultimately can be dealt with? And it's a desperate attempt to be attached to something that we do not feel attached to, but it condenses these attachments to our fears, our vulnerabilities, our judgments, our own inner self-loathing, and it sort of implodes this inner world to be me, 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 and all that's wrong with me. This is how we create our own misery, really, and sort of tie ourselves down to that rather than allow ourselves to create interactions that are ultimately, really divinely healing, and places where we actually feel heard, and people that actually make us feel seen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the devil is not a scary card. It's a beautiful card. The fact that both of these are upright is blasphemous. The idea of perversion of the devil, which I'm sure to many people is like, how could you pervert? We already perverted. But no, the devil card is a beautiful card of great insight and inspiration, and understanding of that which fuels us, um, and the clarity with which that we can create because of that. Um, but when all we are is like smogged by coping mechanisms and bullshit, 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 then you can't really see through that, and it becomes a weighty misery. And I say misery more than hell because I'm not going to be a job to the devil. But conversely, this Eight of Wands is very capable of creating paradise or heaven or whatever the fuck. And creating new moons, creating new light, creating pure light, creating this is what the void looks like when it's full of creation. So it's not that it's not black, but it is that there's light. I would say think about your reward system. Think of the things that maybe you do as a reward, as a self-reward that aren't that rewarding. Or maybe the things that you do that are a punishment for no reason, or that ought not be a punishment. Ways in which we punish ourselves for honesty, for instance, is like, oh, I'm so sorry for saying that. Ways in which we apologize for being noticed, ways in which we apologize for being real or creative or inspiring. Like that can be let loose rather than on a stronghold of numbing agents just pouring into yourself. This is a very isolated perspective as well. So there are definitely some other readings along here, some other energies, other places than your sun sign or whatever, where that energy can be directed. So this doesn't feel like such a limiting and such an isolated experience. Because you have creativity, this Eight of Wands. That is a shareable thing. And like this isn't even like Knight of Wands, like, here, take it, hot potato. This is like, I just am awe-inspiring. Let me just be and see all that it draws to me. Rather than, shoot, let me just dump on myself because everything fucking sucks. And trap myself in this dark, isolated version of myself so that I can never get out, even though that's all I really ever hope to. But it's too scary to actually think about all the patterns and to realize that I still have a will to live and a direction to go. Which is maybe following the best and worst versions of yourself, and maybe we've followed the best versions of ourselves and that got us into trouble. So I wonder what the worst version of yourself is lacking. I wonder what kind of love that version of you still needs. What kind of acceptance, what kind of understanding. Or maybe that's the version and that is the version that's been feeling a lot of decisions. So ironic, how we thought we were feeling the best self, only to realize we were not. But the higher self would go back and like hug that young you, or come to an understanding that we find. And the higher self will elevate when that is understood. The timelines will tangle again. And I do think that is a very real reason why we perhaps feel indescribable intensity of happiness or sadness at certain moments. Um, that being mood swings on bipolar, borderline personality, um, or just major depression disorder kind of stuff. Um, I think I have a theory that it's because on another timeline, somewhere else, a version of us is profoundly happy or profoundly sad, and we can feel those things. Um, and I think when you understand that, maybe you like hate yourself less for not being able to explain it, and are rather more curious about how you can uh, deal with this feeling so that other versions of you on multiple timelines can also feel a little bit more at ease, or feel a little bit more empowered, or a little bit more supported, or a little bit more heard and honored, and validated by that. You can be your greatest friend or your worst enemy, um, and you are, and you don't even realize that you're doing it. And you don't even realize that you're doing it. Two of Wands, Queen of Spades. The Queen of Spades understands that she's doing it. I think becomes very methodical about things, and I think also understands at the end of the day that this energy in you, this Queen of Spades energy, would never let you go without. They would never let you doubt. It's very much the strong parental figure that has dinner ready at this time, and is gonna make sure that is lined up. I'm very reliable, and that is a piece of you. Maybe it's a piece of you that we have to hone in on, but that giving up on does not create the space to hone in on that. And the Two of Wands, I think, is maybe that choice. We can look the other way and run away, or we can come back to here and help. Something else that I've learned about fear, and I had said earlier, uh, you can run, but it will find you. And that is scary to think about. But also, if you look at it from a different perspective, it's like playing hide and seek with a toddler. Like they're just curious and see things differently, so they're gonna look in all kinds of different places. So you can run, but they will find you. And and I love how my tone even changes with that. And I think that is uh, a truth about visions that we have about fear or being chased is sometimes it's not coming after you. Sometimes it's like begging you to stay and begging for attention, like the way your dog or your cat doesn't want you to leave for the workday, or the way, kids don't want you to leave for a work trip, or, the way you don't want to see your lover go, but you don't force them to stay, you just savor uh, the moment and hold on to hope of the next time you'll see them, and then you watch them walk away with great pleasure or whatever. Um, rather than holding so desperately on to um the ways in which we honor. Oh, yeah. The fear wants to be heard. The fear is something much more soft and in pain. But the only thing that we understand is pain, because we avoid it so well. So that's usually how it makes itself known. I think this is true of what people describe demons as well. Um, and ultimately, it's like that, childish hide and go seek game, where it's like not coming after you, but it is like, no, wait, I just want to tell you this story. And I think that changes the way we deal with our darkness. So offer yourself that perspective. Turn around and listen to yourself rather than run, and see what comes up for you and see what changes and see how you can begin to rely on yourself, like this Queen of Spades, a little bit more. Oh, buddy. All right, dear Scorpio. As if that wasn't deep, let's just go deeper. All right, Scorpio. What do you need? A kick in the pants? The Four of Wands and the Wheel of Fortune. Um, the Scorpio is very much at a place of creating a new doorway, or uh, reinvigorating a passion that they've left behind. Um, Maybe in a lot of ways that this Libra energy before was sort of abandoning themselves. Scorpio has done this maybe for too long. And the Four of Wands is asking for a new spark of creativity, a new idea, almost like a new romance. Um, and again, a new perspective too. Um, it's a Four of Wands, so technically there's two doorways. Um, it is a this or a that, the but it isn't as well, because the way that we think of it, um, the the way we understand this as a portal is still two doorways, even though it's one. So if there's two doorways in this one, and that one is already two doorways, then maybe we have one whole doorway, or maybe we have four doorways, five. Um, in which case, think of a lot of things in that way. The ways this wheel of fortune can be exponential growth, but it also can be a staggering stagnation, um, and sort of a fear of growth and loss as well. Um, unless we focus on the center of thought, unless we um, can establish the mind reality in which these thoughts are created, that ultimately governs where this doorway is anyway. So the ways in which you're thinking about creating, and the intention and energy in which you're creating with also plays a very big part. It's it's almost like, for as much as we've talked about blank slates and the void and all of that, it's like we all have a different, like if everybody has their different blank sheet of paper to do with what they will, um everybody is going to choose a different pen or marker or color because that's what they love writing in. The Four of Wands and Wheel of Fortune together, this Scorpio energy is that it is not about the pen or the marker or whatever. It's not about the pen or the pencil. It is about what you use it for. And so maybe this Scorpio would be drawing with a pencil anyway, um, or with with a school pencil, with something that they grew up with, or like a big pen, on something that's really like low maintenance, but ultimately because they know that it is about the tradesman, not the trade. It's about the user, not the tool. It's about, my intention with this creation rather than, this thing in and of itself. It's about my energy and my understanding and my inner world, not just the instrument, or my message, not just the song, etc., etc., etc. Which is a really powerful understanding, I think. Um, it's a very uh, confidence rising understanding, but that can lead to ego. And the problems that I've run into, is that humbleness can very quickly turn into insecurity as well. Um, However, I do not see any harsh indication of one or the other. At this moment, however, read through the rest of the signs and see what is where, dear. Um, be led by your passion, not by your ego. Not that the ego is a bad thing. I think it's a poor descriptor for creative energy, but it is a survival mechanism, and I think in a lot of cases it's a survival mechanism, and sometimes that can be quite a uh, dampener on your creativity, um, for the sake of survival rather than for the sake of creating. Um, but if you follow curiosity and you follow passion and you follow feeling, um, all of those things are going to lead your imagination to the place that you want it to be, um, and ultimately the paradise that you want to internally exist in. Mm. Would you look at that? More fours, four of spades. Um, that is where your internal world will start to take effect of the external world. Um, it's And even the littlest things do, people be like, "Oh, you're looking better. You're looking brighter. Your smile's looking," just because you're, waking yourself up and being gentle to yourself, and speaking positive affirmations to yourself, and catching yourself with negative self-talk. This is one of those examples in which this inner world starts to get a glimpse of what it's like on the external world, because people start to perceive it. Therefore, it becomes more, not more real, but more recognizable. This is where the particles start to stabilize, because there's multiple understandings. This Four of Swords isn't about taking a shot or nothing. It is about that moment where you reach those understandings, where your internal world starts to shoot off. It's like if there was a bright light covered in like a black shield, and that's because it's all, just happening in our head and nobody can really see it. Nobody knows that I'm eating right. Nobody knows that I'm working out. And then somebody knows, and it's like they put a little pin in it, and then out comes this ray, and they're like, "Oh wow, you're really being good to you, aren't you?" And you're like, "Oh shit, yeah." And then somebody else notices, and it's like until you fully actualize this ray of sun that you are, this wonderful light, and until you actualize, choose, uh, until the light also gets to choose that it wants to move and be seen as well. It is quite difficult when we've lived under the shadows for so long. King of Diamonds is being very communicative about that and not shy, not apologetic for it. It's very clear. It's very not demanding, but like, this is what I'm putting up with. This is what I'm not putting up with. Like, party on. This is where I'm at. This is what I stand for. This is what I don't stand for. It's somebody that's also like, I ain't got time to fuck around. I want to know what's what's this what's this deal like, or what are you here for? Like, what do you need from me? Because I have things to do. This is a very no nonsense and a very clear, communicative version of you. Um, as you get outside of this, just in your mind kind of thing, which you're gonna have to. Time moves. It's going to move. You cannot sit on the wonderful idea that is yourself for too long. Um, Especially the things that bring you the most grace and the most pleasure and the most authenticity. Um, it ought to be seen. It's a gift to the world. Don't take that back. And don't be apologetic for it. I catch myself like apologizing for people noticing me. And I mean, obviously, just out in the public street and just strangers, but they'll like make eye contact, and I'm like, oh, I would I should no apologize for what? I am seen. Don't look too long, or it'll burn your eyes. So embrace that. I'm sending you some of that energy. All right, Sagittarius. Dear Archer, what do you take aim for now? Just some good ASMR shuffling for you. Dear Archer. Dear Archer. Oh, okay. Interesting. King of Swords and the Sun inverted. Interesting. Okay. The starter lineage is 2 and 8. Anyway, in numbers, I feel very much like that's about cycles and continuation. I mean, everything has been, and how we're going to continue these cycles or not. I feel like the Archer is a oh no, they died. I hope you can still hear me fairly well. Gotta charge this later. But much of this has been, who are we going to, bloom as the new spring sets? The Archer is very much about sort of an outward look in an obvious context, right? And that's, maybe obvious outward gain, outward validation. There's a lot of philosophy and cerebral quality attached to this. So the ways in which we're perceived, the ways in which that we think others think about us, which is also actually probably why I've never really gotten along with a lot of Sagittarian people or women, because they always seem really selfish. But that just clicks in me for a second. With this King of Swords, and both of these being inverted, I do feel like it's a very big paradigm shift, and maybe even identity shift. That this isn't about outward, or targeting, or necessarily a goal or anything to grasp. I do feel like that's why there's always been like a philosophical nature to it, or association with it. Is it's like, this is life, I must grasp it. No, that is not what it's for, dear. The King of Swords and the star being inverted is very much this identity crisis and identity shift, in understanding Sagittarius in a new way. And it's not necessarily about the outward arrow shooting, but it is about being upright in the spine like a strong arrow, because a strong arrow is aerodynamic, and all the better for your kundalini to travel up, dear. All the better to ascend to the pineal gland, my dear. All the better to ascend to paradise, my dear. And all here. The King of Swords inverted is humble, is, I said something about a sheathed sword earlier. It's not sheathed, but it is close to him. So it's still not a weapon. It's still not at arms or like on guard. It's not sheathed, so it's not something that they've fully gone away with, but it is like a reflection of uprightness, a reflection of self. It becomes more of like an archetypal emblem than it does necessarily a weapon. So what is it that we've learned of ourselves in the ways that we've grown, that we're taking with us, and what are the things that we've learned that are not us, that are coping mechanisms, or swords wielded against us, are dangerous reflections, that are things that we are not bringing with us. And let's be real, Sagittarius, philosophically, it's not that we're leaving anything behind, it's that it maybe doesn't necessarily oscillate in the constellation, and so it doesn't belong in that constellation. Or maybe it's oscillating in a different way, and it actually is, beckoning to be the brightest. All of these particles come with us. They just get loved in different ways, or they get brought to light in different ways, in the same way that constellations will change in the ways that we perceive them, but ultimately never change. Not never. It's not that they change drastically. They change in perception, and they move. But we are those stars. Party on. Da, 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 da. I think that perhaps as much as thought has been structured, whether that be good or bad, you know, I have these habits because I've been hurt versus I have these habits because I love these things. There is a softer side of us that is unbruised from these things, that can tell you outright that some of these things were not you to begin with. They don't belong here. You know, your hate and disgust of your body does not belong here. It was not outright. That was not a part of your soul to begin with. Things like that, you know, these tangible societal standard, things like that, are dark voices in our ears, are unwise and misleading voices in our ears, whereas there's this sense of self that can always sort of lead you back to what it was you, or how it is you thrive, and you know what it is structures you and what it is drives you, as focal points, rather than being driven by somebody else's idea of love or life, or being driven to madness, because you can't see the rest of the world validating it. Because that in and of itself is a desperation for validation, and it simply will not do. Yep. Queen of Diamonds, King of Hearts, is very much about like an intravenous deep fulfillment. That which is what fuels you. This reminds me of that saying too. Maybe it's just because I've read it recently, but the blood of the what is it? The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. This is irregardless of all of that too. If this character, you know, sickly and in, you know, walking on with hospital equipment, I think as somebody who got sick thinking that blood is thicker than water, or who got sick thinking that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, or that the water of the womb is the only thing that can save them. Their sickness was in their own understanding of helplessness, for fear of being able to help themselves. And the King of Hearts knows better than that. The King of Hearts was also inverted, which is very much about not an insatiable need for more, not, you know, all of the things you have less than, you know, think of like a maddened father because he's just not making enough and he makes it everybody else's problem. That's not what we're going for. The King of Hearts in its function here is about earnestly understanding not just what you want, but what others need, and being the voice of reason for that, because you have a deeper understanding. The King of Swords, with the sword upright, the King of Swords is an incredible conversationalist. I think can navigate so many aspects of interaction with this sword. If you think, and with the sword specifically as it is,
It's not, again, not on guard because we're not having an accosting conversation. It's not sheathed because we're not having an assuming conversation. But it is here because we will always have a conversation where I understand exactly who I am. And you will understand exactly who I am. And hopefully who you are too, through it, because of it, and the reflection of. And that is the blessing of King of Swords, peeps. The Queen of Diamonds here is very much a faith and a feeding of it. You know, feed that aspect of yourself so that it may shine rather than apologize for it or belittle yourself and make yourself too vulnerable and constantly sheathing it, or being an asshole and just being constantly on guard. Again, these sort of interwoven, oscillating relationships of ideas, or dichotomies rather than paradoxes, rather than a specific this or that. Da, 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 da. Okay, Capricorn. Cappy, baby. And to get so crazy. Okay, Capricorn. What say you, dear? Okay. Interesting. We have Strength and the Hermit. The Hermit's inverted. Immediate thought, strength of Capricorn to persevere, especially after its time is running out in its ownership of the paradigm. However, the modes of that would look very different, and strength is much more patient and gentile, patient and gentle than one might think. It moves very quickly, it moves very silently. Very articulated, not quickly. It moves very articulated and silently. Fluidly in that way. I feel like this is also maybe cognizant of some sort of resilience present in the age of Capricorn, but also in ourselves in Capricorns. Our ability to be resilient despite change, our ability to be able to make change look like it's always been in fashion, is very much a bright side and a superpower. However, even literally as I say that, the age of Capricorn will do its best to stay in power through advertising and trends and fashion and marketing. That's very much how they will direct the new age to its working order, and direct it to safely where they want it to be, where the powers that be want it to be, rather than where it is we want. So outside of your own strength and resilience, I think in the age of Capricorn, there's a lot of suspended disbelief in this time. And that is to say, no assumptions are made. Even in a lion's preying and hunting, they move silently and so articulated, so as if not to not make mistakes, but not to tell on themselves, not to speak too soon, and make an assumption that their target isn't paying attention or didn't see them or what have you, because even though they know that this thing doesn't see me, I've been creeping. At any moment that could change, and also let me not assume that this creature is so distracted that it'll never notice. It kind of always wins because it never bets on winning in that context. And so I think that's something that will lead us to higher hermit sort of territory, or more a deeper understanding of hermit territory, in that suspended disbelief. Don't argue with possibility, and try not to say I told you so when it does all fly back the same way that you thought. As I say that though, is our cynicism what we want to bring on this cycle? Probably not. And so in your own right, there is assumption and predictability to be reckoned with, so that we do not bet on failure and make that more failure. Not that you have to bet on winning, but bet that you're going to make it look damn good, or bet that you're going to do your goddamn best, whatever it is. But don't bet on failure, just because you think that's the opposite of losing. Again, in this dichotomy of concepts that we've gone through in these paradoxes, just because the lion's not betting on winning in his execution of attack does not mean that the lion is assuming loss, or it never would have hunted in the first place. Damn, okay. Okay, we're gonna jump to Aquarius, because I'm tired and this is dragging on. And this has already been, almost 2 hours. And that pretty much said what Capricorn needed to hear. So we're going to do Aquarius, my last sweetie of the night. And then we will send you all off. Oof. All right, Aquarius. Okay. I guess you got that extra card, love. Ooh, okay. What fell out, I'll get to in a second. Top of the deck, Knight of Wands. Bottom of the deck, Ace of Cups. And the Knight of Wands is inverted, which is interesting because the last time this came up, it was Leo, right? So where does that show up? And can we invert that information? Because where Leo was all, take this, hot potato, da 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 da, I definitely feel like there's reservations. There's, fear of being seen, being perceived, fear of, being misunderstood, even if they say they hear you. Fear of being hurt again. It's very much like, I really want to, but I shouldn't. And I think all of that fire also pairs with this Ace of Cups, this all water. That is indeed an offering. That is indeed not just giving one thing or a thing, but an offering of all things, gold and holy. That sounds so dirty out of context. The Seven of Wands was the card that fell out and inverted. So options, many. Lots of opportunities and offerings. Lots of people wanting your attention. Lots of riding of tailcoats. Lots of me. Lots of mouths to feed. That you don't have to fucking feed either. The Knight of Wands can say no to all of that, but yes to full cup in many other ways. Sometimes the best way to fill your cup is to say no to all of the things that are around you, because they're all distractions, and your time alone with your mind and your own heart in blissful silence is more fulfilling than anything. Maybe it's not a bar full of people, maybe it's you and your dog on a walk. Maybe it's not running into a bunch of people that remember you. It's sharing more smaller doses of trust, independently and individually. And I think that's really, that's really what starts to quell the fires of either fear of giving or of resentment of, I suppose. In either of those contexts, there's a fire regardless. Resentment of all of the take this, take that, da 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 da. Resentment of Seven of Wands energy, or fear of so many offerings and inability to choose, kind of thing. There was another reading that was kind of this example where it was like, I think it was Nine of Cups, and it was like, oh, I could pick any one of these. Like, it was a dating show. Imagine if this was a dating show and this character was actually like, you know what? I'm just gonna go home because fuck all of this. Is very much the vibe that I'm getting. And left alone to their own devices with this golden chalice of for everybody. And that is very much, I think, being so sure of yourself that you can create whatever reality you want to go to in a glass of water. It's being so sure of self that anything you ingest can become part of the new reality. The way people use glasses of water to quantum leap, the way you can use water to reflect light. I think this Knight of Wands is going to understand, and that's going to be more about the ways in which Aquarius jumps. It will have more to do with the mind universe that you've already been setting in your head. That's not to say that all fire is going to come with you. The two of these together will be a perfect balance. However, will we be able to grab the cup at all when we find it, when it is offered to us to take the drink? If our hands are full with rejection and or with resentment and fear. If our hands are already full, then there's no. You gotta drop something. You gotta drop something so you can pick up new opportunity. You're gonna drop something so you can really invest in. You gotta drop both of them so you can really invest in this version of yourself. Because even if you had a cup of water, there would be a reflection, dear. That would be both your reflection and the beginning of everything you've ever wanted if you were to dive into it. That's the best way to look at a cup of water, quite honestly. Oh me, oh my. Okay. These are some very large and wild concepts. And I love it. I'm very here for it. Maybe I've just done a lot of psychedelics, but all of that makes perfect sense to me. Especially the glass being a cup of water. And the ways in which we can choose to step into a new world. I think a lot of readers and mystics and what have you sort of create this fear and scarcity around shifting or, you know, gates or what have you. You know, the Lionsgate portal or blah, 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 blah. That's not to say that there isn't alignments and attunements that are powerful and that are powerful combinations to dance with, but at the end of the day, we are all constantly on a carousel, and any moment you so choose to get off that carousel, or think that to make yourself believe that you got off the carousel, you're picking a door. Door goes to somewhere, anywhere, all the time, anytime. And it's not the right door or the wrong door. You didn't miss the door. You could have missed that door and chosen 10 seconds later, and that will still be the right door. And you're still on the carousel. So, you know, make it the best fucking ride of your life. And I'm going to leave you with that, because even I liked that. So, party on. Happy March. Thank you for your patience with me in this first brewing week of such an intense, new, confusing month. And I hope that you don't just pick your fucking sun sign and go through this. I hope you maybe not watch through the entirety of it all at once. It's a lot. But I urge you to look at your Western sun sign and moon sign and rising sign, sure. But figure out what your Vedic is too. It's very much like two lenses on glasses. So, you know, we're gonna see what they create. And look into that and see, you know, what resonates in your energy, you know, like it shifts to. And if you are just so used to Western and don't want to look at your Vedic, I urge you to always look at your Mars and your Venus, because that plays a very big part in the ways that we relate to ourselves and others. And yeah, do that. So do that. That's the right way to use these things. I mean, that's the most useful way to use these things, to understand the cycle of harmonies in all of the energies that serve all of us, anywhere, all the time. What is it? Anywhere, everywhere, all at once. Anytime, every time, all the time. But yeah, party on. Have a great rest of your month, and come back to this too if you need a reminder or a refresher, because sometimes it's just nice to hear good things about yourself on a loop. I'm kidding. But yeah, come back to this whenever you need to. At the end of the day, it's just like little wisdom me in your back pocket. Party on.